Like, subscribe, and activate the alarm. Outlaws of the Marsh, Chapter 13. The blue-faced beast battles in the northern capital. Urgent vanguard vies for honors on the training field. Zhao and Yang sat their chargers beneath the pennants, ready to enter the field and joust with lances. "Wait!" shouted General Wanda. He crossed to the pavilion and addressed himself to Governor Liang. "Although we don't know which one of these two is more skilled, Your Honor," he said, "the point of a lance is merciless, meant only for destroying robbers and brigands. These men of our own army, and they may be hurt. A slight wound can cripple, a heavy wound can kill. It would have a bad effect on our forces. I suggest that the lance tips be removed, and the ends bound in felt and dabbed in lime. Let each of the mounted men wear black tunics when they fight. The man with the most white spots loses." "An excellent idea," said Liang. He issued an appropriate order. The two contestants went to the rear of the pavilion, where the points of their lances were taken off. The ends were wrapped so thickly that they became knobs of felt. Each then donned a black tunic, dabbed his lance head in a bucket of lime, mounted, and rode onto the field. Lance erect, Zhao Ji kicked his horse and cantered towards Yang Ji. "Hia! Hia!" The former military aide slapped his mount and advanced to give battle, twirling his weapon. "Hia! Hia!" Back and forth they clashed, to and fro, wheeling, circling, man against man, horse against horse. They fought 40 to 50 rounds. Zhao Jin was dappled white, as if spattered with being curd in nearly 50 places. Yang had only one white spot over his left shoulder blade. Liang was delighted. He shouted to Zhao Jin to mount the pavilion. "My predecessor made you a lieutenant," he said, "but after seeing the way you fight, I don't consider you fit to lead the troops into battle. And as a lieutenant, no less. Let Yang Jie take this man's place." General Li Cheng entered the pavilion. "Zhao Jin isn't very good with lances," he admitted, "but he's a fine mounted archer. It wouldn't be right to demote him. You'd only affect morale. Why not let him and Yang Jie contend with bows and arrows?" The governor nodded. "Well said." He issued the order. Zhao and Yang stabbed their lances into the ground and were given bows and arrows. Yang took his bow from its sheath, strung it, jumped on his horse, cantered up to the pavilion, and reined in. He rose in his stirrups and bowed. "Excellency, an arrow in flight knows no mercy. It can cause a grievous wound. Please, issue your instructions." "When warriors fight, who thinks of wounds? Even if death results, there will be no consequences." Yang returned to the battle arena. On Li Cheng's directions, each contestant was issued a shield which he attached to his arm. "You shoot 3 arrows at me first," Yang proposed. "Then I'll shoot 3 at you." Zhao Jin wanted nothing more than to put an arrow through him, but Yang, an experienced army officer, was sure he could deal with his tricks and was not perturbed. A blue flag waved over the general's platform. Yang slapped his horse and cantered south. Zhao raced after him. He tied his reins to the pommel, grasped the bow in his left hand, and fitted an arrow with his right. Zhao stretched the bow to its utmost and let fly at Yang's back. The instant he heard the twang, Yang ducked down well over his stirrups, and the arrow sailed harmlessly past. Flurried, Zhao hastily drew a second arrow from the quiver, fitted to the bow, aimed, and sent it whining towards the back of his rival. This time, Yang didn't dodge, but merely tapped the speeding arrow with the end of his bow and knocked it clattering to the sward. Zhao was frantic. By then, Yang had reached to the end of the field. Hiya! He spun his mount around and came galloping back in the direction of the pavilion. Zhao checked his horse quickly, turned and gave a chase. 8 racing hoofs, like smashing plates and crashing gongs, churned up the green turf with the fury of a typhoon. Zhao set a third arrow to his bowstring. With all his might, he pulled the weapon to the full, his eyes glaring at the center of Yang's back, and again let fly. Oh yeah! Yang turned at the sound and snatched the arrow in mid-air. Then he trotted up to the pavilion and tossed Zhao's arrow to the ground. Governor Liang was entranced. He ordered Yang to shoot 3 arrows at Zhao. Again, the blue flag waved. Zhao cast his bow and arrow aside, grasped the shield firmly in his hand, and rode south. Yang straightened up in his saddle, clapped his mount with his heels, and drummed after. First, he sprang an empty bowstring. Hearing the sound behind him, Zhao twisted around and raised his shield, but there was nothing.
That rogue is good with lances, but he can't shoot,
thought Zhao.
I'll wait till he makes the second false shoot and demand that he forfeit the match. I'll be pronounced the winner.
Zhao's mount by then had reached the far southern end of the field. It turned and started back towards the pavilion. Yang's horse followed, while Yang drew an arrow from his quiver and fitted into the bow.
If I hit him in the middle of the back, I'll kill him.
He mused.
He's not my enemy. I'll tag him in a spot that's not fatal.
His left arm extended as if holding up Mount Taishan, his right arm bent as if cradling a baby. Yang stretched the bow and string into a full moon, quicker than it takes to say. Ah! The arrow streaked like a comet into Zhao's left shoulder. He tumbled to the ground. His horse galloped behind the pavilion. Officers and men hurried forward to help him. Liang was very pleased. He ordered that a warrant immediately be issued, giving Yang the position held by Zhao Jin. Overjoyed, Yang dismounted and presented himself in the pavilion to express his thanks and receive his appointment. But a man on the left side of the stairs suddenly came up and intervened.
Not so fast!
He exclaimed.
You'll have to joust with me first!
Yang looked at him. He was a towering fellow with a round face, large ears, a big, thick-lipped mouth, bristling side whiskers, and an imposing bearing. The man strode up to the governor and hailed him respectfully.
Zhao Jin has been ill and hasn't fully recovered his spirits. That's why he lost to Yang, he explained. Though I'm not very talented, I'd like to put my skills against Yang's. If he can gain the slightest advantage of me, never mind about Zhao Jin's position. I'll yield him mine with never a word of complaint till the end of my days.
Liang saw that it was none other than
Suo Chao.
a captain of the guards regiment of Daming Prefecture. Suo's temper was an explosive as a pinch of salt in the flames, and he was eager to win glory for his country, always plunging first into the fray, and so he was known as the urgent vanguard. Li Cheng came down from the general's platform and presented himself before the pavilion.
Yang was a military aide in the palace, Excellency, he said. Naturally, he is skilled with weapons. We should have known Zhao Jin is no match for him. Now, with Captain Suo, there can be a real contest.
Liang thought to himself,
I want to raise Yang Jie in rank, but my officers are against it. If he can defeat Suo Chao, they'll have nothing more to say. It will silence them for good.
He summoned Yang before him.
Will you joust with Suo Chao?
I could not refuse, since that is your Excellency's wish.
Good. Change your gear behind the pavilion. Tie your armor on well.
He instructed the armorer to provide suitable weapons and added,
Let him use my battle charger.
To Yang said,
Be careful. This is no ordinary match.
Yang thanked him and went to change his equipment. Li Chang gave his instructions to Suo Chao.
You're in a special position.
He said,
Zhao Jin was your protege. He lost. If that happened to you, it would be a reflection on the entire damning officer corps. I'm lending you an experienced battle charger instead of armor. Be careful. Let nothing tarnish your valor.
Suo Chao thanked him and went to get ready. Liang rose and walked out to the stairs. Attendants brought his silver filigreed armchair and placed it before the moon terrace railing. Liang sat down. Officers stood respectfully in lines to his left and right. They directed that the three-tiered parasol of tea-colored silk topped by a golden gourd be opened behind him. At a signal from the general's platform, a red flag waved, golden drums on either sides thundered, and cannon boomed from each of the two formations upon the field. Suo Chao galloped out and waited behind the paint-bedecked gate. Yang Zhe also emerged from one of the formations and rode swiftly to the rear of the gate, where he reined in. Now a yellow flag fluttered over the general's stand, and the drums again thundered. Both formations raised a mighty shout. Then a hush fell on the field as gongs sounded, and a pure white flag was broken out. None of the watchers breathed a sound. They stood in absolute silence. Above the general's stand, a blue flag rose. For the third time, the war drums sounded. The pennant gate of the left formation swung open. Bells tinkled, and Captain Suo Chao entered the arena and checked his horse. Weapons in hand, he was a heroic figure. On his head was a lion helmet of pure steel, with a long red tassel dangling behind. He wore a coat of iron mail, bound at the waist by a gold-plated girdle with an animal's face. Plates of bronze protected his chest and back. Over all was a pink cape with circular designs, fastened at the neck by cords of green wool. His feet were shod in open lattice-striped leather boots, a bow hanging from his left shoulder, a quiver of arrows hanging from his right. He held a golden axe at the level in his right hand as he sat astride General Li's battle-tested, pure white charger. Then the gate of the right formation opened. Bells rang, and Yang Zhe, lance in hand, rode forth. In the combat arena, he checked his mount and leveled his lance. A bold warrior. The helmet of steel on his head gleamed like frost in the sunlight, trailing behind it a blue tassel. Yang wore a chain mail of petal and leaf pattern. A woolen sash held the garment in place. Animal faceplates, front and back, gave added protection. Over his shoulders, a white floral designed cape was draped. Purple wool cords tied it at his neck. On his feet were thick-soled brown leather boots. A leather-handled bow and a quiver of arrows with wedge-shaped heads hung from his shoulders. In his hand was a steel-inlaid lance of pure iron. He rode Governor Liang's flame-colored charger, a horse as swift as the wind. The officers on both sides murmured their admiration. Although their skills had yet to be displayed, the two presented a striking picture. A flag officer riding due south and bearing a gold-spangled banner with the word "Order" cantered up and said, "An order from His Excellency! He wants you each to do his best. Any slackness will be punished. The winner will be handsomely rewarded." The two combatants galloped to the center of the field and turned to face each other. Weapons raised. Suo Chao charged Yang Zhe furiously, swinging his axe.
Hurrah! Hurrah!
Yang, equally militant, twisted his lance, pressed forward to meet him.
Oh, hurrah!
They clashed in the center of the field before the general's stand. Each exerted his utmost skill. Back and forth, to and fro, forearms flailing, 8 hoofs flying. The battle raged for more than 50 rounds with no sign of a winner. Liang watched from the moon terrace in the daze. The officers on either sides of him cheered without cease. On the ground, soldiers marveled to one another.
We've been in the army for years and have been in many battles, but never have we seen warriors like these.
Li Cheng and Wanda, on the general's stand, kept yelling,
Well done!
Wanda was worried that one of them would be wounded. He instructed the flag officer to ride out with his order banner and separate them. Gongs suddenly sounded on the general's stand, but Yang and Swo were both eager to win glory. Neither would desist. The flag officer galloped up shouting, Stop! Good warriors! His Excellency wants to issue an order! Only then did the two contestants lower their weapons and subside on their mounts. They cantered back to their original starting point and halted by their respective penanted gates, facing Governor Liang, awaiting his command. Li Cheng and Wanda came down from the general's stand and proceeded to the moon terrace. Excellency, they said to Liang, such skill as those two display would be made full use of. Very pleased, Liang directed that the combatants be summoned. The flag officer transmitted the order, and Yang and Swo rode up to the pavilion and dismounted. A soldier relieved them of their weapons. They entered the pavilion and bowed. Liang presented each with a silver ingot and a set of fine clothes, and bestowed on them the rank of major. He directed that commission documents be drawn as of that day. Swo and Yang bowed and expressed their thanks. They left the pavilion, bearing their gifts, removed their combat equipments, and changed their clothes. They then returned to the pavilion and thanked the assembled officers. Liang ordered the two to pay respects to each other and join the majors. The masked soldiers withdrew, banners waving, preceded by the golden drums, beating out the victory roll. Liang, in the company of his senior and junior officers, remained in the pavilion for a feast. When the sun was sinking to the west, the dining ended. Liang mounted his horse, started back to his residence, escorted by his officers. In the van, side by side, rode the two new majors, their heads garlanded with red flowers. The street was lined with joyous crowds, young and old, as the entourage entered the city's east gate.
What are you so merry about?
Liang demanded from his horse.
Are you presuming to laugh at me?
Several old men knelt and replied, We were born and raised in Daming, the northern capital. But in all our years, we never saw such jousting. We were out in the field watching those two bold fellows. Who wouldn't be happy to see such skill? Liang was very pleased. He returned to his residence. His officers went their respective ways. Swo Chao's friends gave a drinking party to celebrate his appointment. Yang Zhe, a newcomer, didn't know anybody and retired alone to his quarters. From then on, he served Liang diligently. Of that, we need to say no more. We'll dispense with idle chatter and come to the point. Liang became very fond of Yang Zhe after the journey at the training field outside the east gate, and they were together every day. Yang received an additional monthly stipend. Gradually, he developed friends. Swo Chao respected him for his ability and strength. Time fleeted by. It was the end of spring and the approach of summer, the 5th day of the 5th lunar month, a festival day. Liang and his wife, Lady Tsai, were celebrating it at family dinner in the rear salon. After several toasts and 2 courses, Lady Tsai asked a question.
Today, Your Excellency is a commander-in-chief and holds an important post in the government. Where does this honor and high rank come from?
Since childhood, I have always studied. I have learned history and the classics.
Liang replied,
But I'm a man of feeling. Of course, I know how much I owe your noble father in the eastern capital. I can never thank him enough for his help.
That being so, how could you forget his birthday?
I remember it perfectly. It's the 15th of the 6th lunar month. I've already sent out stewards with 100,000 strings of cash to buy ornaments of gold and precious stones to present as birthday gifts. They've been gone a month and have bought up 9/10 of what I want. When everything is ready, I'll have the gifts delivered. Only one thing is troubling me. Last year, the trinkets and gold ornaments and jewels which I dispatched as gifts were snatched by robbers on the road. All of those valuables gone, and we still haven't caught the bandits. Who should I choose to deliver them this time?
You have plenty of officers at your disposal. Just pick a man you can trust.
We have another 40 or 50 days yet. There'll be time enough for that when I've got all our gifts ready. Don't worry, madam. I'll know what to do.
Their feast continued from midday till the second watch. Then all withdrew. Of that, we'll say no more. A new magistrate was appointed to Yuncheng, a county seat in Jizhou Prefecture in the province of Shandong. His family name was Shi. His given name was Wangben. Officers sat to the left and right one day when he was holding court, and he called before him the sheriff and his two constables, one known as the infantry constable, the other the cavalry constable. The first commanded 20 pikemen and 20 foot soldiers. Jutong! The cavalry constable was very tall, with a long, luxuriant beard. His face was brown as a chestnut, his eyes bright as stars, like Guanggong of old. Known throughout the county as Beautiful Beard, he came from a wealthy family. He was a chivalrous, generous man, and had many friends among the gallant fraternity. The infantry constable was called Lei Hung. A tall man with a ruddy complexion and a fan beard fringing his face. He was extremely strong and agile. In a running jump, he could clear a chasm 20 to 30 feet wide and was known as Winged Tiger. Originally a blacksmith, he later opened a grain mill, a slaughterhouse for cattle, and a gambling den. Although chivalrous, he was also rather narrow-hearted, but he, too, was proficient in arms. Their main job was catching robbers. When the magistrate summoned them, they held him respectfully and awaited his orders.
Since taking office,
He said,
I have learned that bandits in Liangshan Marsh, which is the watery region under our jurisdiction as part of Jizhou Prefecture, have been pillaging the land and fighting our soldiers. They rampage in every hamlet and village and are quite a large force. I've called you too because I want you, without fear of hardship, to take some men and go out, one group through the west gate and one through the east, and patrol. Arrest all the robbers and bring them in, but don't disturb the villagers. On a hilltop past the village of East Bank is a big red-leafed tree. It's the only one around. Each one of you must bring back a few of those leaves to prove you have patrolled that far. If you don't, I'll know you are lying and will punish you severely.
The constables returned to their stations, mustered their men, and set forth. Lei Hong marched through the east gate with 20 foot soldiers. They searched several villages and the surrounding countryside, and finally came to the hill beyond East Bank. They picked some of the red leaves and started back for the village. Before they had gone more than 2 or 3 li, they noticed that the door of the Lingwen temple, which they were passing, was open.
The temple has no custodian, but the door isn't shut,
said Lei Hong.
Could there be some bad person inside? We'd better take a look.
He and his men lit torches and went in. There, lying on the altar table, was a big fellow, stark naked and fast asleep. The weather was hot, and he had peeled off his tattered garments and rolled them up to serve as a pillow beneath his head. He was snoring peacefully.
Remarkable,
said Lei Hong.
Our magistrate must be psychic. Here's a robber in East Bank, sure enough.
He shouted an order. The 20 soldiers all piled on. Although the big fellow fought strenuously, they soon had his hand thrust behind him. They pull him out of the temple and march him to the manor of the ward chief. And because they took him there, 3 or 4 heroes met in the East Bank village, and treasures worth 100,000 strings of cash were sought in Yunchang County. Truly, heavenly spirits from the sky gathered, and earthly fiends among men convened. Where did Lei Hong escort that fellow they had nabbed? Read our next chapter if you would know.